All right, Jackson Gatlin, Wes Goldberg, myself, Cyrus Saatsaz. We just broke down the Eastern Conference. Now it's time for the West. Who's going to come out of one of the deepest conferences in recent NBA history? If it's one of the deepest conferences, Wes Goldberg has a hot take he's going to throw in just a moment for you folks. We're going to break that down next. This is NBA 1 through 5. NBA 1 through 5, your NBA preview extravaganza.
Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making NBA 1 through 5 a locked on production, your first listen every day. We're going to try to do this annually. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. You can follow Wes Goldberg on Twitter at WC Goldberg. You follow Jackson Gatlin on Twitter at JT Gatlin. Did I get that right?
JT Gatlin, yes, sir.
Yes. And you can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow. All right, we made our Eastern Conference predictions. If you missed that, if you're watching the live show, it'll be uploaded soon. If you're watching the recording, just go to any one of our channels where that'll be available. We're going to the West. We're going to start with the Southwest Division, which I'm going to guess is the worst. I don't know if you two will agree with me on that. Wes, I'll start with you. Who's going to be in the first place in the Southwest Division?
I kind of want to start with a hot take and just say New Orleans Pelicans. But I think it's going to be pretty close between New Orleans, Memphis, and Dallas. If Zion Williamson can come back and be a top 15 player in the NBA, which is what he looked like at the tail end of 2 seasons ago, that everything about the Pelicans I like. The only questions I have is defensively, can they hold up? And then offensively, is not having a true point guard going to be an issue at some point? Although I don't have as big of a concern as that as I've heard some people have. I'm not going to pick the Pelicans. I'm going to pick Memphis. I'm going to play it safe. I just trust Ja Morant and that defense and that coaching staff and the culture that they've put together there. I just wanted to say the Pelicans a little bit because I thought about it, but I'm going Grizzlies.
If we were doing a ranking of like, the price of admission type thing, a league pass ranking, I'm with you. The Pelicans are going to be a fun team to watch, and who knows, man? They might actually shake things up. I don't know, Jackson. What are your thoughts? So, Wes, you go with the Grizzlies?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm right there. I mentioned it in our first show together, looking at the Eastern Conference. The Cavs were my team for this in the East. The Pels are my team for this in the West. Where they're top end, like they could be second seed in the Western Conference. They could be 2-3 seed territory. They could also be like mid-tier play-in territory if things don't like super mesh together. I think they've got the largest discrepancy between where their top end is and where their floor is as far as what they could look like this next season. I do have some of the similar playmaking concerns that Wes has, although I do think the Pels have done kind of a good job about like playmaking by committee a little bit. CJ McCollum has shown a different version of himself now, being kind of being tasked with a bit more of that primary facilitator creator role. It's a different look than we ever saw with him playing next to Dame in Portland. He was basically just your traditional 2 guard there, just play off a Dame and just take your turn with the rock, that kind of thing. It's kind of been nice to see that version of him. And this year, the Pels aren't going to be picking him up midseason, right? So they'll have an entire year of CJ McCollum. They've got all the other returning guys coming back, and again, adding Zion. If he looks like a top 15, top 20 guy coming into this season, the way he did a couple years back, I mean, sky's the limit for that Pels team. But like Wes, I will not be spicy. I will play it safe. I'm going to go Grizzlies with the number 1 spot. Although I will push back, Cyrus. This is not the worst division in the Western Conference. The worst division would be the Northwest Division, easily.
Yeah. Really? Okay, we'll break that down in a second. But so let me ask you this. A lot of people are sleeping on the Grizzlies. I routinely criticize people who think that the Grizzlies are not a title contender. They have the second best record in the West. I think anyone who says that losing Kyle Anderson is going to diminish them this year does not follow this team closely enough. Kyle Anderson's good, but he was not the reason why the Grizzlies were a top-notch team last year. Are they a title contender to you, gentlemen? Wes, I'll start with you. Or do you agree that the Grizzlies are a team that... Yeah.
They're just outside of the circle of being in title contention. And the reason I say that is that's how they feel about their own team. If you just look at the moves they made, I'm with you. The Kyle Anderson thing is not a big deal, but he was an important part of their rotation. And they decided, you know what, we're going to get cheaper, younger at that spot instead. And I like their picks, Jake LaRavia and these other guys that they got in the draft. But this is a team that did not overreact to maybe taking the league by surprise a little bit last year and winning 56 games. And they're just saying, you know what? We had a good plan in place. That's how we won 56 games. What we're building with the window of Ja Morant and to a lesser degree, Jaren Jackson Jr. in mind. And so you're just going to keep going in that direction. This is a team that could have made a Kevin Durant move over the summer, possibly, depending on how real those conversations were. They didn't, because they really, really are dedicated to this Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr. window. So I like it. I like their outlook. I love what they did. But I think that even if you asked them and gave that front office truth serum a little bit, they would say, you know what, we're probably right on the outside of the inner circle of real contenders, which gives us a chance. It gives us a chance, but we're not gonna be ready to just sell everything and go all in for this one season.
Yeah, they're not quite in that all-in territory yet. I think Wes summed it up beautifully there. And that's the thing that you love about the Grizzlies kind of trajectory and their timeline is they haven't, some teams, they get a taste of that success. They get that one season. They're like, all right, let's pull the trigger on whatever the first available deal is to maybe get us over the hump, rather than just continuing to gradually build something that has some more long-term sustainable success, and B, not overshooting yourself to where then, you're disappointed the next season when maybe you don't have a repeat success of being the 2 seed in a stacked Western Conference, where suddenly there's some regression, right? Maybe they played outside of how good they actually are at stretches of last season. Maybe they come back down to earth a little bit this year, regress to the mean a bit more, and they're floating somewhere around that 3, 4, 5 territory, which is still really impressive given the age of this Grizzlies team, the fact that they have still an insanely bright future. So I'm high on the Grizzlies. I think they're still very much cemented number 1 in the conference, but just outside of true title contention.
Yeah, it's crazy hearing you guys say that, because as someone who's a Warriors fan, I've never denied that. The Grizzlies scare me the most in the West. They scared me the most last year. They scare me the most again. The Clippers could maybe, but I see them like the Nets. A lot of question marks. I need to see the product before I make any true decisions on that. The Grizzlies scare me, but we're all in agreement they're going to finish number 1. So safe to say Pelicans number 2. Any disagreement there?
I might go Mavericks. Mavericks number 2.
Okay.
There's a lot of question marks in Dallas for me. The Christian Wood thing, we'll see how that experiment goes as 6th man. Jason Kidd, are we sure he's a good coach, or was it just like a one-year thing? I don't know. He also wears out his welcome pretty quickly with guys, so we'll see if things go south there. But I just trust the infrastructure of Luka Doncic so much. He is so good. He makes his teammates better, and it is rare that a player that good falls off his teams fall off in a meaningful way, right? And so if Dallas is they won 52 games last year. If that defense holds up, they get some internal growth, Luka still is Luka, I still think floor is probably like 49, 48 wins. And even if, like, for New Orleans, that's a pretty substantial leap that they have to make from last year. So I'll probably go, I'm going to play it really safe the entire time. I'll go Dallas number 2.
What about you, Jackson?
I'm sticking with, so I'm gonna go Pelicans number 2 in the division. I'm actually a lot lower on the Dallas Mavericks. I was really hoping that they would somehow manage to, because obviously the Rockets don't matter. They're going to be at the bottom of the division. Well, second to the bottom of the division. But as far as Dallas is concerned, right, losing Jalen Brunson is going to be a huge loss for them. Having 3 guys that could create their own looks, could, create for others, three ball handlers in Brunson, Luka, and then Spencer Dinwiddie was kind of your tertiary ball handler. But the consistency and the safety that Brunson really provided last year, and given how well he played, I thought he was a big part of a lot of the Dallas Mavericks' success. So losing him is going to hurt. You get Tim Hardaway Jr. back. You add Christian Wood. Kind of feels like 1 step forward, 2 steps back a little bit potentially for this Mavericks team. Yeah. And I've also seen there's so many eerie parallels between how Luka has looked in his Mavericks tenure and how James Harden looked during some of the years before the Rockets added Chris Paul.
Look at you.
I see the heliocentric similarities in their games, and I think this is going to be the hangover year, right? They had a lot of success last season. And I think this is going to be the year where losing Brunson is going to hurt them considerably. I've got the Mavericks, like, just as far as seeding in the Western Conference, I think they're going to be somewhere like 6th seed or like top end of the play-in. That's my spicy take. I think that even though you have a certain floor with a Luka Doncic type player, I just do not have a lot of confidence in this Mavericks team, and a lot of question marks about, especially, the Christian Wood situation, all of that moving forward.
I could be totally wrong on this. Like I said, I just bet on great players, and Luka is just one of those guys. And maybe I'm just giving them too much confidence there. But I push back a little bit on the Jalen Brunson being a big loss. I think that's going to hurt them more in the playoffs. But in the regular season, he only averaged 16 points a game last year, and he was fine. I think a lot of that is replicable through, like, you could replace that with a steady dose of Spencer Dinwiddie, getting Tim Hardaway Jr. back. Maybe this is a team that can make a trade midseason. They're going to be relying on Christian Wood for playmaking and scoring again. We'll see if that works, but that's sort of how you go about replacing a Jalen Brunson. But it's not like he was this great player. Like, he had loud and successful playoff games, but in the regular season, he was just kind of fine for them. I'm not as worried about it during the regular season, even though it does definitely put a ceiling on them in the playoffs.
Wes, I'm more shocked that you have not responded to Jackson's Luka Doncic James Harden comparison. I've never heard that before. That sounds like a Rockets fan saying that, but
Lucas compared his game to James Harden. Hello?
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
But the moment you said that, that's creepy. I'm starting to think about it. And I'm going, my God, is that a possibility? Wes, is that a possibility? Could Luka become another massive disappointment like James Harden?
Well, I don't know if James Harden was a massive disappointment. He won the MVP. Like, he was really good for several years. I just think in the playoffs, those teams didn't, like, in the playoffs, they disappointed. They were also going through the dynasty warriors, or trying to. I don't know. I think if Luka's career ends up looking like James Harden, that would be a really good career, but with playoff success. That's the thing. So, but all we're talking about in this show is the regular season, I think. So,
yeah, that's true. That's true. That's fair. Luka Doncic, by the way, reportedly seen smoking lung darts in Europe. I love that Euro side of him. I wonder if it affects his on-court play at all. But he did come in this season a little thinner. So let me ask you this with the Mavericks before we move on. Christian Wood was acquired. He's going to be a free agent after this year. Christian Wood seems like the type who probably cares about individual numbers, probably cares about his new contract next year, yet he's projected to come off the bench behind JaVale McGee. Is that going to blow up in everyone's faces, or is that going to blow up in everyone's faces?
I like that recipe. You want your sixth man to care about numbers, because it's literally their job, is to just float second unit. So Christian Wood, care about your numbers, as long as you care a little bit about the rebounding and assist numbers too, and not just the points per game numbers, but care about your numbers and play like you're playing for a contract. I think that's a good recipe. And for Dallas, from an Excel spreadsheet standpoint, if it doesn't work, that contract is super tradable. They can move it at the deadline and just kind of turn some things around on that second unit. So I'm bullish on the Christian Wood experiment. I think he's a nice candidate for sixth man of the year. And so, yeah.
Having seen and covered Wood for a couple years in Houston, I originally was kind of high on the idea of his pairing with Luka Doncic. I don't know how many, you're bringing him off the bench. I don't know if they're going to bring him off the bench with the idea of that he's going to kind of like hold down the bench unit and be expected to produce there while the starters are getting their rest. I think that's an absolute mistake. Now, if he's going to get adequate reps with Luka on the floor together in tandem, and if he's actually going to be a rolling presence and a picking and pop presence with Luka in the pick and roll, then I think that has a lot of potential. We saw a very tiny little brief sample size of what would look like playing alongside James Harden, and it looked absolutely unstoppable. So if he can replicate some of that same success with Luka Doncic, then awesome. I don't think Christian Wood has the mental fortitude to accept a role coming off the bench. Everything that I've come to understand about his time in Houston, he was a big locker room issue, not a team player, very, individualistic in the goals that he was trying to set for himself. And having him on the cusp of a contract year is not great, because at the end of the day, Christian Wood can walk out there and get you 20 and 10 on any given night. Defensively, he's also giving up 30 and 15. So the math ain't gonna math, unfortunately, in Dallas's favor, especially if you're bringing him off the bench and not catering towards playing him alongside a guy who could get him some incredibly easy looks and also open things up, conversely for Luka, just based on the spacing that he provides offensively, all that stuff. The one area that I am kind of bullish on is I think C. Wood needs an alpha in front of him. Like, he needs another guy to basically be like, hey, I'm better than you. Sit down, know your role. And I think he's got two of those guys in Dallas now, in Luka and in Jason Kidd. So maybe those guys can kind of bend C. Wood to their will, where he's just like, hey, buy in or you're just not even going to play. buy in or we're trading you. And maybe he needs a bit of that wake up call because there wasn't a guy like that in Houston, right? Houston, he was basically the best player on the team, and that's not who he is, right? He is a good complementary, incredibly talented player, could be a great third or maybe fourth piece on a team that's vying for a title, but you're going to be wholly disappointed if you're, relying on him to be consistently good on a nightly basis.
We'll continue on finishing up with our predictions. First, got to give some love to LinkedIn, one of our relatively new sponsors here at Locked On. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. And if you're looking for work, folks, LinkedIn is the way to go. But for employers, post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Jackson, I'll let you handle the Rockets. It's your team. You cover them. What are we going to expect from them this year?
They're still going to be a bad team. They're still incredibly young. They're still going to have a lot of defensive lapses, but they're starting to form an actual identity. And I think that's been the big question mark throughout the first few years of Stephen Silas's tenure with the Rockets is what is the identity for this team? Silas was brought in to coach James Harden and Russell Westbrook and Christian Wood, and those first two names left him high and dry. So he was left with Christian Wood and scraps. And that first year, dealt with the remnants of the COVID season, all this stuff. And then the subsequent year, he still was dealing with, all right, well, Christian Wood's kind of still around. Like, is he in the long-term plans? Is he not? We've got Jalen Green, rookie season. We're trying to bring him along. Kevin Porter Jr. learning how to play the point guard role. All these different variables kind of at play in contention with one another. And so the Rockets have been the worst team in the NBA in back-to-back seasons. This year, though, throughout training camp, through the early part of preseason, through their offseason additions, some names from the draft in Jabari Smith Jr. and Tari Eason, guys who are bought into the defensive side of the basketball. The addition of Lionel Hollins to the coaching staff is going to, really help the Rockets kind of cultivate a bit more of that defensive identity. They're still going to be a young team. They're still going to make a ton of young team level mistakes. They're not going to suddenly jump and be, vying for a play-in spot or something this year, but they're going to be a fun, talented, high-paced team. They're going to be a fun league pass team to tune in and watch Jalen Green dropping 30 every other night. And yeah, I mean, that's basically what you can expect. They're going to be the fourth best team in the Southwest Division because the Spurs are going straight to the bottom, tanking for Wembanyama.
Absolutely, and there's no point in wasting time on them. Let's go on to the division that that I forgot who said is the worst in the West. That's the Northwest Division. The Denver Nuggets, I think, are the safe bet to be number one. Any disagreements there? Jackson, I'll stay with you. What are you envisioning with the Nuggets at number one?
Yeah, I think you got to have the Nuggets at number one. Obviously, you've got Nikola Jokic, back-to-back MVP winner, just an absolutely transcendent basketball player. The work that he did last year to drag the Nuggets to just relevancy, despite all the injuries, all the key pieces missing. You hope Jamal Murray is going to be healthy and able to kind of come back to his pre-injury self and be that, that Robin to Jokic's Batman this season. I really like the Nuggets. I think they're the safe pick at the top of the division, and I think they're easily one of the safe picks to be one of the 6 guaranteed playoff teams in the Western Conference for sure.
Wes, I think you said the Pacific Northwest. Is it Pacific or it's just Northwest? I think you said the Northwest Division was the weakest. I did.
We both did. We both said they're the weakest.
I see what you two are saying because 3 through 5 is just pure garbage, but the top 2 is stronger than the Southwest. It's a good argument to make either way. But
look, I don't know that there's even a point into arguing it.
It's not.
They're both really top heavy divisions with teams that are tanking at the bottom. But
yeah.
Look, I love the Nuggets to come out on top of this division. I think that they could potentially have the best record in the Western Conference. I love Nuggets. I think they're a legit finals contender. I love the offseason moves that they made. Adding Bruce Brown, I think is going to be huge. I think KCP is an ideal fit. You obviously are getting Jamal Murray, so you have Jamal Murray and KCP in that backcourt. That's perfect, right?
Yeah.
Like that's their version of Stephen Clay, right? It's you have sort of a below average but kind of underrated defensive point guard next to a 3-and-D type of shooting guard. And then Aaron Gordon, I liked what we saw from him last year, starting to buy into his role and mature a little bit as a player. I'll go back to what I said about Bruce Brown. What that dude is going to do for this team, I don't know, can be understated, I think, or overstated going into this season, because he's an awesome perimeter defender who can guard almost four different positions. He's going to take like a lot of assignments off of their best defenders or best players like Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., and guys like that. He's a really good off-ball cutter. And that's dessert for Jokic every single night. That's going to be amazing for him. He's going to find him so many easy looks. I love this Denver Nuggets team. I think 1 through 7, they might have the best roster in the Western Conference. 1 through 7.
Whoa, are you serious? Over the Warriors?
Yeah. 1 through 7. I said 7, not 5.
I know, but 1 through 7,
okay.
you're talking about Steph, Clay, the pool party, Draymond Green. I mean. Yeah,
one through 7 belongs to the Clippers. Hello?
No, and
that's my spicy take. So there you go.
You can have that.
And that too.
That take.
So number 2, and just to let people know, the Nuggets had made a lot of moves this offseason. They added again Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Bruce Brown, Ish Smith, DeAndre Jordan was a weird one. Drafted Christian Braun, who I actually liked as a draft pick, given it was a late round pick. They lost Monte Morris. They lost Will Barton. They lost JaMychal Green, and DeMarcus Cousins no one wants, which is kind of weird to me. I thought he had a decent season last year. So number 2 is going to be the Minnesota Timberwolves. What are we thinking about that? Starting with you, Wes.
50 wins.
Okay.
50 wins for Minnesota. I think this is going to be a team that finishes the regular season top 10 in offensive rating and top 10 in defensive rating. This is a team built to dominate in the regular season. Rudy Gobert is going to fix all their issues defensively. I think I'm good with saying that. Like in the regular season, Rudy Gobert is a walking top 5 defense. He's everything's going to click into place there. I think the way that it sounds like they're going to stagger stuff with D'Angelo Russell and Rudy Gobert just running pick and roll, and then Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards just running their more dynamic kind of offense together, picking and popping and doing all these things. I love the recipe. They have a bunch of depth. They added Kyle Anderson. They added Taurean Prince. They kept Jay McDaniels, which I guess is awesome for them. According to what they're saying, he's ready for a leap. And if he takes even a little bit of a leap compared to all the talent that they added, like that's a lot of new stuff, improved stuff there. And if Anthony, and by the way, didn't even mention whether or not Anthony Edwards takes a leap, and they seem to believe that he's ready to take another step too. I love Minnesota in the regular season. I've got them marked down for 50 wins and one of the best 6 seeds in the Western Conference.
Jackson, your thoughts on the Timberwolves?
Also 50 wins, one of the top 6 teams in the West. They're also going to be an easy 4-2 out in the first round of the playoffs. Doesn't matter who they line up against. Doesn't matter who they play. Rudy Gobert is a flawed player. Rudy Gobert is an 82-game player. He is not a 16-game player. Russell Westbrook's an 82-game player. Ben Simmons is an 82-game player. Those guys are not 16-game players. They can be easily exposed in the playoffs. Teams do not care about scheming and trying to beat a Rudy Gobert-led defense 82 games out of the season. They just don't. That's why the Utah Jazz dominated through the regular season for so many years. They're going to get to the playoffs and be entirely disappointed when the front court duo of Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns get sliced and diced to holy hell every single game once they get to the playoffs. But since this is a regular season show and prediction show, yes, I fully agree. They're going to be an easy 50-win team in the regular season. I do agree they're going to look really dominant offensively, defensively, all of that. And it's just the wheels are going to come off the train once they get to the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I think that Rudy Gobert trade they gave up so much. I thought it was a desperate move for a player who's not going to give you anything offensively, who's slightly overrated defensively. But at the same time, the Timberwolves are a desperate team. I mean, they haven't been relevant in a long time. And I do think Anthony Edwards is going to be a savage player, man. I'm excited to see what he does. So who finishes 3rd in the Northwest? We got Portland, the Thunder, the Jazz. They are all in the Wembanyama sweepstakes.
Wes, did you say Thunder?
No, it's Portland.
Oh, okay. I thought you said Thunder.
Portland should be in the Wembanyama sweepstakes, but they're not right now. They're going to come out of the gate. They're going to, like, first 20, 30 games, they're really going to try hard. And look, Damian Lillard's awesome.
Yes.
Damian Lillard's awesome. They're going to be the 3rd best team in this division. I don't know if that's good enough to make the playoffs. It's probably good enough to make the play-in. I like some of the moves that they made. I just don't know how they're going to stop anybody, but they're going to put up points offensively.
Here's the issue with the Western Conference is there are 4 teams that definitively do not want anything to do with the playoffs. Maybe 3, depending on if you ask our fearless leader, David Locke, who is convinced that the Jazz are going to do something of relevance this season. But the way that I see it is there's 4 teams that aren't vying for the playoffs, and that's the Thunder, the Jazz, the Rockets, and the Spurs. The problem is the other 11 teams in the West all want the playoffs. So 3 of them are going to be just completely disappointed when it doesn't pan out for them. The Blazers, I just don't think they have enough, right? They tried to retool around Damian Lillard. You lock down Anthony Simons. You had GP2. You've got Jeremy Grant, I guess, but he's on, final year of his contract, so he might be kind of out for himself to just go get his numbers. Not the biggest fan of Yusuf Nurkic. I just don't see it with the Blazers. I think you talked about Charlotte being like that dark horse team, right, to go for Wembanyama in the East. I think the Blazers could be that dark horse team in the West where, like you said, they're going to start out strong. They're going to try, really try for 20 or 30 games, and then they're just going to realize, we're so far outclassed from the other 10 teams ahead of us in the West that they just pull the plug, sit Damian Lillard, I don't know, and just completely adjust, or maybe even trade away some pieces and just go fire sale. And I don't know.
I agree. Wes, I'm 100% with you. I think Damian Lillard is a fantastic player, but who knows what we're going to see this year, right? Like I've been hearing some things about his abdomen injury. That maybe it's not 100% healed. And if it's not, we're not going to see the same Dame. So I do think this is a team that I agree. Maybe for 20 games, they're going to try, but Jeremy Grant does not move the needle for me. I do love the rookie Shaedon Sharpe. I think he's part of the future for this team, but I just don't see much in the present. So I guess so is it going to be Jazz and Thunder? Does it even matter? Why is that? Why is our fearless leader so high on the Jazz besides being the radio play-by-play broadcaster? Like what?
That's the reason. That's the reason. You need people to tune in.
There you go. Yeah. The argument is as
man.
Right. I need butts and seats. The argument is as presently constructed, and I can hear out this little bit of an argument, right? As presently constructed, the Jazz have like this weird mix and match of like some like competent NBA rotation pieces, and like if Colin Sexton plays like his pre-injury self, then he's like an easy like 25 and 8 kind of guy. You'd feel comfortable about putting them above the Thunder, maybe on the same tier as the Blazers. The problem is Danny Ainge is going to strip this thing down until there is nothing left. So that's going to happen going across the NBA season. You're going to have guys walking up with second-round draft picks from like 4 years from now and walking away with rotation caliber players, because that's what Danny Ainge's MO is. He went to Boston and tore that thing to shreds and then built it back up as a contender. He's been tasked with doing the exact same thing in Utah. So yes, in a hypothetical, if the roster remains untouched across the NBA season, Utah could maybe be in the play-in discussion, but it's not going to remain untouched. And Danny Ainge is going to, again, fire sale everybody to Kingdom Come on that roster.
All right, we're going to go to the last division here, and that's the Pacific Division. This is a tricky one because even though the Golden State Warriors are, I don't know, I speak for myself saying this. I think they're the favorites to repeat as world champions, but I'm not confident in them finishing first in the division. This is not a team that is gung-ho regular season, right? And they're going to be playing a lot of their young players. I don't know how that's going to translate. Jackson, I'll start with you. Who's going to finish first in the Pacific Division?
I think it's kind of weird because I think you look at the 3 teams that are very clearly like the top heavy favorites of the Pacific Division in the Warriors, Clippers, and Suns, and you could make that same argument for all 3 teams, right? Maybe the Suns are kind of in this weird spot where they've got a lot of organizational stuff going on, so maybe they come out with a little bit more of like a chip on their shoulder, like trying to prove, hey, we're still relevant, right? We're still the same team that made it to the finals and was 2 wins away from a title a couple years back. Mm-hmm. And then maybe you make that argument for the Clippers, right? With Kawhi and PG having such extended absences, where maybe they really do actually try to show up and show out throughout the regular season a little bit so that other people will take them seriously. But I think you can make that argument for all 3 of these teams that none of them are going to take the regular season super seriously because they all 3 understand the level of talent that they have, and that the end game is to just get to the playoffs and be healthy, and that they like their chances, whether it's as the 1 seed or whether it's even as a 4 or 5 or 6 seed. They like their chances in the playoffs against anybody. They just need to get there and be healthy first and foremost for all 3 of these teams. So to me, it's a bit of a toss-up. I'm gonna go Warriors as number 1 here. in the division. I just think there's some question marks about the Suns. I think we're going to see maybe some more regression this season with them. And then Clippers, I just think you're going to get such a steady diet of like PG and Kawhi resting games, sitting out, no back-to-backs, that kind of stuff, that they're inherently, their ceiling is a little bit lower for their regular season win total. So yeah, I'm going to go Warriors number 1 in the division. Safe.
All right, Wes.
Yeah, if you would have asked me this like a month ago or even maybe a couple weeks ago, I probably also would have said Warriors or maybe Clippers, depending on the day. These teams are going to be really close. The more I think about it, the more I'm starting to lean towards Phoenix. Let's remember, this team won 64 games last year. You're asking them to win what? Like 12 fewer games than because that's a lot of games to not win. And I think there's going to be a lot of wins in the Western Conference to sort of absorb because you have so many teams like Utah, OKC, Houston, San Antonio just tanking, like actively losing games. There's gonna be a lot of wins there to soak up. So seeing Phoenix win like 50 games as opposed to 64 games, it's a really hard concept. And also Chris Paul is a regular season like wins magnet. All he does is win games in the regular season, and whether it was with the Clippers or with Phoenix or any of the Oklahoma City, all that guy does is beat bad teams, where Golden State can get caught on a bad night on the second night of back-to-back and say, you know what, we're just not going to play our dudes tonight. It's just Kuminga and Moody for 30 minutes. And they could lose to Houston. Like that's totally possible, where I just don't see Phoenix really doing that at all in the regular season. So I'm surprising myself, and I don't feel great about it, but I'm going to go with the Suns finishing number 1 in the division. I know we're going to get to the Warriors. I like the Warriors. I don't think they care about the regular season. I'm with you, Cyrus. I think they're built for the postseason. That's all they care about. I think they're going to use the regular season to get those young guys a bunch of minutes. But the problem with that is they're going to lose games that they shouldn't be losing when you're doing that. But all of that is meant to get those guys ready to contribute in the playoffs. So I can see Golden State just giving up losses, like just kind of for free during the regular season, where Phoenix, I think, is going to have much more of a chip on their shoulder and want to get that 1 seed again.
Yeah, that's fair. The only reason why I'm going to pick the Warriors first is because even with the fact that they have a nonchalant attitude about the regular season, they still do come away routinely dominating. I mean, last year was one of the worst regular seasons, certainly the worst of their championship teams, and they still have, 53, 54 wins. 54. And those young players are good, and they're going to be playing heavy minutes. So I'm going to stick with the Warriors at number 1. Wes, I'll stay with you. Who goes number 2? Behind Phoenix.
I'll go Warriors number 2.
Okay.
I don't feel good about it though. I really don't. I think at the end of the day, we're talking about 1 or 2 wins really separating these teams. The thing with the Clippers that is it
safe to say, just to piggyback off your point there, Wes, is it safe to say that the disparity between these 3 teams is probably the closest margin of any of the other divisions that we've kind of talked about? Because I think we look at the other ones.
The only one would be the Atlantic division, where I think like Boston, Philly, and Toronto could be separated by like 3 games too.
Possibly, but I see it as even more razor thin between these 3 teams, because for all the reasons we're kind of outlining here, these are the 3 teams that maybe just don't care about the regular season, so they could be just very closely next to each other as far as just their actual win totals.
I just still think with the Clippers, best case scenario is what Kawhi and Paul George play 130, 135 combined games, best case scenario, where you're going to get a lot more, I think, health from Phoenix's best players and Golden State's best players. So the Clippers but they still won 42 games last year without those guys for most of the season. But still, I'm banking on Golden State and Phoenix's availability more than Clippers. But this is, to Jackson's point, a division that only really cares about the playoffs.
All right, so Wes, you're going the Warriors second, finishing in second. Jackson, who's going to take second place in the Pacific Division, in your opinion?
I think I'm going to go kind of the inverse. I'll go Suns again. To me, it really could be like, can we get a 3-sided die or coin or something? Because it could be a toss up between any of these 3 teams. I'll go Suns. Again, they've got the consistency. I think they're going to have a bit of a chip on their shoulder, right? Something to prove maybe. And like Wes already alluded to, right? You're just not going to get PG and Kawhi for a lot of games. I do think having. Like John Wall is an absolute workhorse, and there was like this perception around the league that he was like washed and done for, and the dude can still hoop, and he's going to be a big part of that Clippers team, and he's also going to be available. Like he's going to be there for all 82 games. He would have played all 82 games last season for Houston if they weren't very hell-bent on giving KPJ the reins and letting him, be the point guard of the future, all that stuff, and maybe, on the down low trying to better their draft positioning as well. But I think John Wall is going to be kind of that guy who can kind of help ease the flow of like PG and Kawhi sitting out some games, resting, that stuff. He basically took the entire year off last season. His body is in great condition. You know, he's going to be in a great spot for this Clippers team. Pardon me. So, but I'll say Suns second, Clippers third.
Okay, I'm going to go Clippers second. And I'm about to throw a very hot take to you guys. Before I throw this hot take, is it a big deal that the team announced that John Wall will not be the starting point guard, but that rather Reggie Jackson will be the starting point guard? Anything to take from that?
No, I think that I would actually be interested to see. I think John has a chance to play himself into the starting lineup. I think that it's one of those situations where if you brought in John Wall and benched Reggie Jackson, I think there's more harm than good that does, because Reggie's been the guy. He's been holding down the fort. He's been, a piece for that Clippers team for a while now. So you give Reggie Jackson the chance to kind of stay in his spot. But if John Wall comes in, is just out producing Reggie Jackson off the bench for the first 10, 15, 20 games, then you can maybe sit down and have that conversation with Reggie where you're like, hey, we need to start Wall maybe next to you in the starting lineup, or hey, we're gonna flip this and have you come off the bench and John's gonna be the starter because his numbers are just so much better. But you can't do that to Reggie, right? You can't bring in a guy who just took a year off basketball and say, hey, he's gonna be the starter over you, even though on paper I think John Wall makes more sense to be the starter at this point. You got to make John kind of come in and earn that, and I think John understands his role and what he can provide to this Clippers team. So I think we're going to see John Wall start for this Clippers team at some point in place of Reggie Jackson. It just won't be right out of the gate.
So who's in third place then? Jackson, I'll start with you.
I gave Clippers third place.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Wes.
Yeah, same. I gave the Clippers third place. The other thing that we're not talking about with the Clippers is I mentioned Nick Nurse being one of the top 3 coaches in the league. Ty Lue is one of the other top 3 coaches in the league. He gets his groups to play.
Ty Lue is phenomenal.
Nobody's asking me who the other top 3 coaches, but it's fine.
Who are the other ones?
Well, you gave us Nick Nurse. I'm curious. Who's your number 3, Wes? Who do you got?
Well, I didn't say it was number 3. I just said one of the 3.
One of the 3.
Eric Spoelstra is the other top 3 coach.
Spoelstra is awesome, but it is disrespectful to put Kerr in there, though. But
Kerr is top 5. Kerr is top 5.
All right. All right.
But I think Ty Lue just gets the most out of these groups too.
So just a friendly reminder, and this is one of the main reasons why I'm not sold in the Clippers, because this is year 4 of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George being on the same team together, and so far they've done almost nothing. I mean, massive disappointment. So I don't know what's going to change this year. Ty Lue, who a lot of people echo your sentiments as him being a great coach, has still never won more than 47 games in a regular season. I need to see a little more success on paper from him before I start holding him up that high. And then my third place team is going to be the Lakers. So I think the Lakers are being constructed. I think they're going to pull a trade at some point. The only
wait, Cyrus, who are your first and second then? Who do you have falling below the Lakers?
Warriors, Clippers.
Okay, so you have the Suns below LA. All right.
I told you hot takes coming here, man. Yeah, so the Lakers are third. I do think that Anthony Davis is motivated if he plays a lot. I actually think Lonnie Walker was a surprisingly good pick. I think they're going to make a trade to add even more talent on that team. I think the Lakers will finish with the third best record. That's my thought on it. So who's number 4? Jackson, I'll start with you.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Wes, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go, Wes, go.
I got the Lakers going number 4. I think people are a little low on the Lakers. Look, they're going to make some sort of move in the middle of the season. I understand where they're coming from, though. Come out, and you know what you're getting from LeBron. Does Anthony Davis have it this year? And if the answer is even close to yes, then at that point you make a move. And I also think that there's enough of a reason to experiment with Russell Westbrook. See what you got from him. Can he put up a bunch of numbers coming off the bench and then maybe amp up his trade value a little bit more, make it a little bit less hard to move him. So I just think at the end of the day, I think we kind of, when people like us talk about the NBA every day and kind of think about it every day, we get like really in the weeds about depth and like roster balance and fit. But like historically, if you look at a team that has 2 of the top 15 players in the league, which the Lakers could have if Anthony Davis is fully Anthony Davis again, those teams don't lose a lot of games. Period. End of story. And so if you've got LeBron and AD at the peak of their powers here, LeBron coming off a year where he scored 30 points a game, he's still very much one of the best 7 players in the league. Yeah, they're just not going to. Teams like that don't lose a whole lot of games. It's just for them, it's always been health. When they've been healthy and at their best, they've literally won championships. Now, again, it's going to take that roster getting filled out because the rest of that roster is really, really bad. Okay. they're going to have to fill out that roster. But the other part of it too is that Sacramento is the other team that we're talking about in this division. So I have them being number 4 in the division.
I have the Lakers begrudgingly at 4 because I'm not nearly as high on them. Maybe high is the wrong word to use to describe it, Wes. But I just, the when this Lakers team was last relevant, when they were good, they were a defensive team, right? They were a defensive juggernaut, and they were 21st in defense last year. And I just don't see, with the pieces that they have currently assembled on this roster, I just don't see how you become a good defensive team. Anthony Davis isn't a top 10 defense by himself. He's a good defensive player. He's great, but he's not going to be able to save that defense by himself. There's too many question marks around that roster. There's the question mark that we ask ourselves every year. Is this the year where LeBron maybe regresses just even a teensy bit, right? Or is he going to walk in his like 7th prime? So I don't know. And then offensively, I think there's question marks, right? Because you could have LeBron dropping 30. You could have AD dropping 30. Do they have enough outside of LeBron and AD to actually like complement that? Maybe Russell Westbrook buys into that 6-man role, and maybe he's, averaging a triple-double off the bench and having a ton of fun doing it. Maybe Darvin Ham is able to like command that respect from him to where he buys into the realignment, the new role. I just really don't see it with this Lakers team. I sense another year of kind of disappointment. And if they made the move like right now, the Indiana Pacers Buddy Hield Miles Turner move that's like staring them in the face, if they did it right now, I'd feel a lot more optimistic about their chances this season. But the fact that they're going to go and the fact that they're going to muddle through a third of the season or half the season with Russell Westbrook before they get desperate and break the glass on that 2027, 2029 first round pair of picks and ultimately deal Russ to Indiana, I think they're going to lose enough games to where there's some serious question marks.
I don't think it's going to be that long. I think that the unofficial trade deadline for this year is going to be January, when all these free agents are able to get traded again. I think the Wembanyama sweepstakes is that strong, where the trade deadline in February is going to be almost pointless. All the deals I think are going to be made much earlier this year, at least from the teams that are tanking. When I say like I'm not high on the Lakers, I think they're going to be at best like a 500 team, but that's good enough for 4th in the division. This is a team that has to make a move, Jackson. You're right. The bottom line is this team, the way it is. I like some of the guys. Lonnie Walker's fine. Juan Toscano-Anderson I actually really like for them. There's some stuff here that I like. Damian Jones I like for them. There's some Thomas Bryant. Like, there's stuff here that I like. They just need to have more of the things that they need.
And just to build on that, I think adding Patrick Beverley was actually a solid move for the regular season. I don't think the Lakers are doing anything in the postseason. But Patrick Beverley was solid. Lonnie Walker is actually a solid defensive player, and he's a wing. Thomas Bryant is, I think, maybe underrated. He's a solid player as well. Max Christie, the rookie they drafted, is so far played good in the preseason. I think they're going to do okay. They might be 500, but that'll be enough. So my 4th place team, and this is where you folks will be surprised and disappointed maybe, is the Sacramento Kings. I think the Kings
last in this division.
I think the Suns are done. I think you're going to see the Suns collapse in the same way.
I cannot wait to come back to the show in 6 months, Cyrus.
Yeah, and you'll tell me I'm right, because the Phoenix Suns they have no depth. Chris Paul is their best player outside of maybe Devin Booker. He's 38, and maybe they figured him out. Maybe like pressuring him full court, like what Alvarado did last year. Maybe that was the formula for success. But I think they're done. And you have a center who's disgruntled, who doesn't care. You have a power forward in Cam Johnson, who's unproven. What's his name? Their small forward, the defender, Mikal Bridges. He got exposed big time by Luka Doncic. He's not as good of a defender as we thought he was. I think the Suns are done. I think we're seeing a potential rebuild coming, built around Devin Booker and whoever else. I think the King, look at the Kings real quick. I'll tell you who they added and they lost. Because I think they had a solid offseason. They added Malik Monk, Herter. Kent Bazemore was a horrible pickup, but they let him go. So it's back in the positive. Keegan Murray, potentially solid draft pick. Jaden Hardy, potentially solid draft pick. And this goes on top of a Sabonis last year. I think they're going to be okay. And I like Mike Brown as a head coach. I think they're going to finish 4th. I know I'm crazy, but that's my pick. So which means my 5th will be the Suns. Who's going to finish last? I guess the Kings for both of you, right? Is that how we finish up?
Okay. I'm going to ignore your Phoenix take there.
I'm not going to ignore it. I'm saving this. I am so looking forward to revisiting this episode because look, I'm down on the Suns going into this year for sure. I'm not that down on the Suns. Down on them. That is a take that rivals Jalen Green will be a future bench player. That's how bad that take is. So
what is so good about them? I guess why are you still so high on them when they lost
on Phoenix?
Yeah. The Chris Paul's
Devin Booker's
38.
awesome. Chris Paul is a wins magnet in the regular season. Mikal Bridges, like you're saying, he was exposed against Luka Doncic.
What?
He wasn't exposed against Luka Doncic.
Luka Doncic exposes
awesome.
Not the
everybody.
Warriors, not Andrew Wiggins. Not
Cam
Andrew
Johnson
Wiggins.
is a solid player. DeAndre Ayton, like whatever, but he's a decent center, and they do have like DeAndre Ayton's a good center. And they have depth here and there.
Who's on their bench? Because Cam Johnson was supposed to be a bench player. Now you got to trade. What's his name?
Crowder. They could get something back for
Crowder,
him. But look, they're getting Dario Saric back. Campaign is a solid backup point guard. They've got what's his name? Shamit off the bench. I like Torrey Craig as a backup swing man. He's good. He's a solid player. I'm not saying that their bench is awesome, but their top 5 is as good as any starting 5 in the league. Like at the end of the year, we'd be talking about Phoenix's starting 5 is like the best starting unit in the league by net rating. That wouldn't surprise anybody. They're just going to win a bunch of games.
That's my hot take, man. I think the Suns are done.
Can we go? I want to talk about the Kings though, because I do think that we're going to get 5 playoff teams out of this division.
Oh, wow. Okay, let's talk about the Kings. So their starting 5 is going to be De'Aaron Fox, Kevin Huerter, Harrison Barnes, Keegan Murray, Domantas Sabonis. Davion Mitchell, I love. I think he might actually take De'Aaron Fox as a starting role at some point sooner than later. Rashawn Holmes is okay. So I guess their bench is a little shallow. They got Dellavedova back. That's a little surprising. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I mean, Malik Monk is going to come off that bench probably, and Keegan Murray might also come off the bench. They might end up starting KZ Okpala at that 4 spot there. So, because Murray can kind of play both forward spots where Okpala can't really do that.
Right.
And so I actually like their bench. This is a team that could basically put 3 shooters on the floor around De'Aaron Fox at all times at minimum. Rashawn Holmes is maybe the best backup center in the league, so I think he's more than fine. I love Sacramento. I think Mike Brown is the perfect coach for them. I am so happy that he finally got another head coaching opportunity. I think he's going to be awesome for that roster. I think he's going to get De'Aaron Fox in the right spots. You look at what they did in the offseason now. This is the ultimate 2 steps forward, 5 steps back kind of organization in Sacramento, where you kind of feel like you like some of the things and then they go backwards for no reason. But their moves basically are geared towards building around Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox in a way that makes sense, which is finally for the first time. So when I say playoffs, I mean play-in. I think the Lakers and the Kings are probably play-in teams, but that's way better than what it's been in Sacramento for a long time. I love what they're building right now.
Yeah, they're on the right track. After watching Keegan Murray play in summer league, I was like, man, this guy is going he is fantastic. He is so calm, cool, collected. I was maybe 40 feet away from Keegan Murray when he drilled the 3 to send the game to overtime against the Magic. And that was just you could just tell in that moment he gets the pump fake. And so again, his game is just going to translate really, really well for the Kings. I mean, I agree with everything that Wes just laid out. I think the Kings are taking the steps in the right direction. I think that De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, that move last year kind of reeked of oh my God, we're trying everything we can to maybe sneak into the playoffs this season. But then after sitting down and kind of discussing it with Matt George from Locked on Kings a little bit, he kind of also highlighted, hey, this isn't necessarily we're grasping at straws trying to win now move. This is hey, we really think that Domantas Sabonis is a better, more complementary fit to De'Aaron Fox, and that these two guys together with the right pieces around them can be the right trajectory for this Kings organization, for this team. And that's what we're kind of seeing them do. So hopefully they don't have their 5 steps back like they usually do with their, the Kangs and whatnot. Hopefully they continue to take steps in the right direction moving forward.
I still hated that trade. I still hate the Halliburton trade. That's going to come back to bite them in the future.
Of course.
But you're looking for
the worst trades ever.
You're looking for short-term solutions, and Sabonis was a short-term solution.
Agreed. I totally agree with you on that. With that said, I'm telling you, don't sleep on Davion Mitchell. This kid will be a player in this game, especially defensively. Anything you want to add? Do we want to predict awards, or are we good? Are we done? I'll leave it up to you guys. I can care less either way.
I've got to run to go do some Rockets content, so I don't have time to predict anything else, unfortunately. But
you're welcome to everyone. You're now enlightened and informed on the NBA season. Either these gentlemen will ridicule me for the Suns being last, or they'll come back and say, damn, Cy, you know what you're talking about. Anything else? Wes, promote Twitter, all that stuff. What are we promoting before we go?
WC Goldberg on Twitter, and then just follow the Locked On NBA show. I'm there every Friday morning.
Beautiful. Jackson.
Yeah. So on Twitter at JT Gatlin, obviously host Locked on Rockets. Not sure how many Bay Area fans want to tune into that, but if you want to get some, schadenfreude from listening to, a team kind of going through the rebuild right now, tune in, check that out. And then I'm also the host of Locked on NBA Monday. So every single Monday, 3 interviews from the biggest stories around the league.
Beautiful. So Mondays, Jackson, Fridays, Wes Goldberg for Locked On NBA. And you can follow me on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow. Gentlemen, this was a pleasure, man. Thank you too. Let's make this an annual thing, please. NBA 1 through 5. Love you guys. Thank you. And for those of you in the chat saying you came late, we're going to publish this in just a moment. So don't worry. You can catch the whole thing. Later, everyone. Thanks, you guys. Love you guys, man. Peace.